Hello, everyone. My name is Jake Giroux with Modern Ice, and I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar event featuring the new iceQ SmartBox technology version 2.0. We are very excited about the content we have to share with you today, and we will be featuring two great guest experts to walk you through this new product. Before we get into that, I want to briefly go through a few housekeeping items. Unlike our previous webinar events, today's webinar presentation will be presented strictly in a pre-recorded fashion to allow you to consume the content at your convenience. We've collected some user questions for today's event that we will be answering, but if the content generates any additional questions, please feel free to contact us and we will follow up with a direct response. Lastly, we are planning several upcoming webinar sessions surrounding topics such as equipment training, troubleshooting, maintenance, and others. Information on those events will be forthcoming, but if there are particular topics you'd like to see covered in a webinar series, please let us know. Now moving to today's event and introducing our topic experts. Our first expert speaker is Juan Marte. Juan is the CEO and founder of iceQ. He has been working with ice delivery software for more than 10 years and has a deep background in delivery technology. Our second expert guest is Tony Dixon, owner of Cool Running Software. Tony has used iceQ technology in his experience as owner of Olmsted Ice and has integrated the technology into his Cool Running software platform. Both have unique and vast perspectives to offer our clients, and we are very excited to have them joining us today. Thank you both for being here. And with that, Juan, I will kick it over to you for a product overview.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate the opportunity for this webinar. And also, Tony Dixon, thank you so much for your continued support and your perspective as a user and an Iceman in the industry. So we're here to talk about iceQ 2.0. It has been a long time coming. A little thing called COVID kind of put the brakes on the supply chain and make getting this product to market quite a challenge. But Modern has it in stock, so we're excited about that. And it's already flying off the shelves and in the use of customers as we speak today. So for those customers that don't know what iceQ is, let's talk about what it is at a high level. iceQ is a technology that fits inside your freezers. It's a little piece of hardware we'll show you later, and it provides a much needed data point to this industry, specifically how full is your freezer and what is the operating temperature of that freezer in real time. What you have here below is a little map of an account with a bunch of iceQs in various colors. Green means the freezer is 50% higher. Yellow means it's between 25 and 75, and anything that's red is less than 25%. This type of data available on your phone or on any computer is the much needed data point that gives you the ability to make the best decision possible. With this decision, with this ability, with this data, you can increase productivity, enhance your customer service experience, and obviously improve routing. With this high overview, we're going to get into the webinar here. And now I'm going to introduce Tony, and he's going to give you his perspective from an Iceman and Cool Running side. Tony?
All right, thanks, Juan. Well, before I get started in talking about this, about how to help reduce costs and increase productivity, a little bit about myself. Yes, I was in the ice business. My family was in the ice business since 1979. I personally been in the ice business for about 30 years. And also, of course, I created my Cool Running software while at my ice business. Roughly about close to 10 years ago, I met with Juan Marte, and we talked about the iceQ product. By the time I ended up selling our ice company, I had over 300 of these iceQ units at my ice company, and they made a huge impact on the way I did my business. So some of the challenges and solutions that iceQ brought to the table. First off, what accounts that needed servicing. The iceQ product could help us really pinpoint exactly which locations that we had to hit. And there's an analogy that I always like to use in this situation here, where I said prior to having iceQ, the Iceman mentality was more about the carpet bombing method, going out, static routes, going out, keep fill up stops. But that ended up in a lot of non-deliveries, refusals, and low invoice totals. Now, iceQ made it so we made it more strategic strikes where we were actually hitting locations and getting optimal amount of our invoice totals. Another situation challenging for us was the customer really empty? Okay, every Iceman's had that situation, a customer calling me up just for the sake of calling up, just to make sure they got ice before a busy weekend or a holiday. Now, iceQ solved that problem. We would get phone calls at Olmsted Ice and we would immediately look at the iceQ and see exactly what they had. They might say they were down to about 10 bags, when in fact they were actually over 50% full. Did my drivers actually fill up the location like I asked them to? Another common problem that I had at my ice company, as well as every other ice company out there. You got drivers out there, especially ones that are not commission-based drivers. They would go out to a location and you'd say, I want you to fill up every box right to the top. But they just want to get their day done so they can come home and possibly not have to reload their ice. iceQ immediately solved that problem because we could automatically tell whether or not the driver did their job. That location's far away. Do we really need to go to that stop? I mean, that's huge for Iceman out there. You got that stop that's way off the beaten trail. You have clusters of you'll have clusters of routes, but then you have those outliers, good accounts. But do you want to waste driving an extra 20 miles to get to that account? iceQ takes care of that problem. And when you can go out and actually hit those stops, you can actually cluster with other stops that are in those areas. Another situation. I wish I could have gotten an alert on the compressor going down. Absolutely. I mean, you're an Iceman out there. It's late on a Friday. It's on a Friday afternoon, and all of a sudden the compressor goes down, and you're getting a phone call on Saturday or even a Sunday to have to go out. iceQ would tell us whether or not the compressor went down, they lost power. We would get that alert, and we would take care of that problem immediately, rather than waiting for a customer to call us up and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because it's the only time customers call up ice companies to fix their problems at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Delivering ice, most expensive part of our business. How can it be more efficient? Absolutely. Every Iceman will agree, distribution is our most expensive cost. And that's what this comes right back to what I said. We got to be more strategic in our strikes as far as making sure that we're actually filling up these stops. Meltdowns due to plug condensers, open doors, locks being stuck. On top of being able to see like when the power goes out on these locations, we also get to see, well, when the temperature's starting to rise. When the temperature stays up for too long, we know there's a problem. And we also know as we know our accounts. So Icemen really know their customers, and they also know that one customer that has a habit of opening the door, putting the lock on the hasp, and shutting the door and leaving a crack on the door. We've many times made that phone call to that clerk and said, hey, I think you put the lock on the other side of the hasp again. They walk out and say, yep, put it back the way it's supposed to be. 30 minutes later, the iceQ temperature sensor goes well. So, there's a lot of challenges in the solutions that iceQ actually brings to the table, but it's not just the Iceman, me sitting inside my office that's having a great day because iceQ is making my job a heck of a lot easier. It's our customers as well. This next slide will discuss what does a customer get out of, using the iceQs? Okay, if we can go ahead and flip to the next slide. Okay, customer satisfaction will go through the roof because of the iceQ sensors. Customers love it. They don't have to call you anymore. And one thing we always tell our customers, we know when there's a problem or that you're low before you do. We minimize the amount of times we have to go to location rather than having locations out there we have to go to 4 times a week. We can actually cut that down to almost in half. We reduce the number of merchandisers at the location. This is something that was a huge sales tactic for us at Olmsted Ice against our main competitor in that area. We would go out to location and we would see that they might stack up the location with 3 merchandisers. When we know that they didn't need 3 merchandisers, we could cut that back to 2 and sometimes even 1 merchandiser because the iceQ sensors could make it so we knew when we had to go versus the carpet bombing method, which means load the customer up with so much ice, there's no possibility they're going to run out of ice. So we were able to reduce that. So it really brings a competitive advantage to you as an Iceman actually approaching new accounts. When you can walk in with this nice, sleek little thing that Juan has created, say, hey, I'm going to put this unit inside your box. If your competitors aren't using some type of technology to become more efficient for their location, especially going back to the reduced merchandisers where you can save them money on the amount of boxes that they have at their locations. So that makes you more valuable as a customer. And also, now you're not competing so much on price. You're competing more on where Iceman should be competing, and that's on service. So that being said, I'll bring it back to Juan on the next slide.
Awesome, Tony. It's great to hear it from your eyes and your perspective. That means a lot. So iceQ 2.0, it still gives you that very, very important coveted data point, but the form factor is completely changed. And the reason we changed the form factor is one of the bigger challenges, or really the only open challenge I had with the product in the previous 7-8 years, was that it took a long time to install. It was a bit bulky and it was difficult. And, in the field, in a cold wall, could take you 30 minutes, sometimes, even an hour. So what's different about iceQ 2.0 versus the old one? Well, before getting into the specifics, I think it'd be good to put perspective for those that are new to iceQ is what did we have before? So let me show you that in a little bit bigger format. What we had before was this channel. It had two sensors, one here, one at the end, and then had little rails that would go up into the freezer with screws. And if it was a cold wall, you had to have an additional panel to create a false ceiling so it wouldn't nick the coil. It was big, it was bulky, but it was durable and it worked. Again, the challenge was how long it took. The new form factor, which I'll show it to you and then we'll go back to the slide, as you can see, is way slicker, much simpler. Here's the sensor. Rather than using a heat coil system, we actually use LED lights. So it gives you the benefit of having lights in the freezers 24/7. A lot of the lights that come with the freezers over time, they break. Here's the temperature probe sitting here at the end. And beneath it are little magnets. This little guy pops right up into the front edge of the freezer and the sensors are angled down. And then it gives you that beautiful data point. It's also, let me turn it back to this, more accurate. And what do I mean by that? In the previous version, because we were using sonar sensors use the concept of sound. We're now using light. We were blinded by that first 7-8 inches. So most of the time when a fill would happen, I'd tell Tony and the rest of the market that if they filled it up to 85% or higher, we would consider the box completely filled. With iceQ 2.0, you know whether they filled it right up to the very ceiling or only 2 inches because the sensors now read in millimeters and don't have a blind spot. And of course, they read to the end just fine. So that is an added benefit. But the single biggest benefit is just the simplicity, form factor, and ease of install. It installs the same way inside the compressor with a controller. We have the Y adapter that adapts into the light fixture of the merchandiser, a power supply, etc. We're excited about this product. Modern has it in stock. You're going to love it. It rocks. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jake, who's going to talk about brass tacks. What do I get for this? What's my return on investment? So with that, Jake, thanks again for having us here. We'll turn it over to you for a little bit.
Yeah, no, thank you, Juan and Tony, for those great insights and perspectives on what the iceQ product can bring from a functionality and customer service perspective. And what I wanted to present next is this is data that Modern Ice compiled in cooperation with some of our customers, some iceQ users, with the purpose being, establishing what is the true cost associated with delivering ice on a per stop basis, and where can the iceQ technology, if integrated into an operation, serve to alleviate some of those costs and produce a cost savings within a given operation. So what we established as part of that market research is really the cost per stop could vary from as low as $20 per stop up to as high as $60 per stop. And a couple of variables that were driving that range was, one, not every company is honed in on what that metric is specific to their operation. And then secondly, there's a variance in terms of how companies are operating. So one operation could have different day-to-day factors and variabilities going into what they're doing versus another operation. Delivery radiuses could vary, where customers are located or could vary. So those were some of the factors that were driving that range of $20 to about $60 per stop. But the one consistent theme that every ice company recognized was that the distribution of ice costs more than the manufacturing of ice. And when you look at some of the factors listed here on the slide, from hourly pay to payroll taxes to benefits to workers' comp to fuel to so on and so forth, there's really a lot of factors that contribute to what your true cost per stop is, which really illuminates the fact that there is some potential in terms of utilizing the iceQ to become more efficient and effective in distribution, and how you could look to eliminate some of those costs. Tony, I don't know if you can speak to some of the data within your operation and kind of what you saw there.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I see something like this, it really strikes to home as far as the challenges that I had in my ice company. These costs, I feel, are very accurate as far as, like, if you're going to put an estimate on something. $20 per stop on a stop that you wasted stopping at, even on a cluster route and stops that are actually close together. If you stopped in a location that did not need ice, that you had on a regular standard route, you could easily waste $20. A driver stopping in, going inside, checking on the customer, and then moving on to his next stop that might be 5, 10, 15 minutes away. The $60 cost, now you're looking at a situation where the location might be much farther away, or even if you have two guys sitting on that truck, adding on an extra 60% on payroll by having a bond for that truck for that helper. So absolutely, these costs right here are huge. And again, this goes back to what we did at Olmsted Ice by adding in the iceQs to making it so we were reducing this. And at this point right here, I like to bring up my study that I personally did. And this is great that Modern took the time to go ahead and look at this to really try and pin this down. But after 3 years of working with Juan and iceQ, we had one location that was that type of customer that in the summertime we might stop in 4 times a week. I added up all the stops over 3 years, and I did an average, and I also did it on the invoice totals. And I found out that over the 3-year period, I reduced the amount of stops to those locations by 51%. That's over a 12-month period, 51% reduced stops. That's reduced stops in the off season and on season. But the average invoice totals went up 48%. So that was 0 times where we actually had wasted trips. And every trip we went into locations was profitable. So on top of having increased invoice totals, we were also taking advantage of this cost per stop savings that we were getting on these locations, and really brought in and showed us what our return on investment would be. So, Jake, they've also done some really great, some more studies here. So I'll turn it back over to Jake.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. So, after we established what the cost per stop was in terms of ice delivery, we looked at it from, if we were able to reduce the stop frequency by 25%, what could that potentially mean in terms of cost savings? So could you avoid buying a 16-foot delivery truck at an estimated $105,000? Could you avoid buying a 22-foot delivery truck at an estimated $155,000? Could you insure, license, and maintain fewer trucks and even employ less drivers because iceQ is allowing you to be more efficient and effective in terms of your distribution and allowing you to eliminate some of the costs associated with the current distribution strategy? And then I wanted to illustrate here on this slide, this is an example of an ROI analysis. And we took some generic input variables here on the left and looked at, what if we did a purchase of iceQ units for 30 merchandisers? You have the one-time hardware cost of $285 per unit. You have the monthly fee of $795. We landed somewhere in the middle in terms of that $20 to $60 range and said, we're going to say the cost per delivery is $45. The average number of deliveries per year, we're saying 52, so one time per week. And then again, we're basing this on, we can eliminate 25% of our stops by utilizing the iceQ technology. So when you look to the right here, pre-iceQ, using these variables, so 30 boxes, $45 per stop, 52 stops per year, the distribution costs associated with that would be about $70,000. Then you go to the right here on year one, you have your one-time fee of the hardware at $8,550. You have your monthly fee at about $2,800. and you have your all-in cost year one on 30 units of about $11,412. Then you have your distribution costs, which you've reduced by 25% by utilizing the iceQ technology at now $52,650. For your total distribution cost for year one of implementing the iceQ technology of about $64,000. So within the first year, you're potentially recognizing about a $6,000 net savings or profit gain by utilizing these 30 units within your operation. So the year to pay back is approximately about half a year. And then as you'll see, as you go to the right in year 2 and year 3 and year 4, your annual return past year 1 is about $14,000. So over a 4-year period, that's about a $50,000 savings by implementing the 30 units and those 30 merchandisers. And again, for discussion purposes today, we just use some generic numbers as input variables here, but this is something we can absolutely cater to your specific operation. So if you're interested in potentially evaluating, what could an investment on iceQ mean for your particular data points or your specific operation, this is something, reach out to Modern Ice. We can absolutely sit down, change these data points, and have a more specific conversation relative to your operation.
Wow, that's impressive numbers.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to add a little something there, and kind of more. Maybe you mentioned trucks in the last slide, but I did want to bring this up too. That one thing that I love telling other Icemen as far as like what having iceQ does for you out there, especially when you're working through a week and you've got the ice business. We're sitting on multiple trucks, especially in the north. The south maybe not so much, but they actually get to use their trucks majority of the year. But say on a pre-iceQ, you've got you're invested in all these trucks, and on a Saturday, you're again out there carpet bombing like crazy with all these different trucks out there just blasting away at these stops. And you might even end up having ice left at the end of the day. But with iceQ, you can actually it's 100% accurate that you can actually reduce the amount of use of your trucks and actually not even have to buy that one extra truck versus a Saturday where I might have to run 8 trucks. If I end up getting some rain or some crappy weather, normal carpet bombing methods, we would go out there and just hit the stops anyways, just to be sure. But because of iceQ, you can actually reduce the amount of need for that truck because you know exactly what you're going to need out there, and say rather than running the 8 trucks on that day, you could just cut it down to 2. And also during your busiest moments too, you're actually able to say, you know what, I can actually do more with less trucks. And in the end, I totally concur with all these numbers here that you could actually reduce not having to buy that one extra truck, just investing in smarter technology.
Yeah, let me add one point because this brings up something that I hear quite a bit. Well, I'm only going to use iceQ in the winter, or I'm only going to use iceQ in the summer. And in actuality, the reality of the situation is iceQ helps you every day of the year. Why? Because it gives you information to make a decision. How can you not live with that? So I think, Tony, you know this firsthand that it is just as valuable in the summer, especially on a spike or on a weekend or a coming holiday, to be strategic about your asset. So get that out of your head.
I would argue that with people about this and say, actually sometimes it's better to just have it during the on season. When you're looking at 2:00 in the afternoon and you're saying, okay, it's a go or no go situation when it comes to using going out to these certain stops, and you're trying to figure out, I have calls that have come in, and I have iceQ sensors. That iceQ sensor that was sitting about 40% during the day, by 2:00 in the afternoon hasn't moved. So you're like, you know what? I can push that one until tomorrow, and I can take care of that phone call or that one hot shot or restaurant or something like that. I can do that stop tomorrow morning because I know they can make it. But in the old way, prior to iceQ, you had to go because you were running blind. And this is where in the summertime especially, it really does reduce the amount of times you're going to have to hit those locations. As I said earlier, that stop that I was hitting 4 times a week, those stops got cut down on average to 2 times a week. Sometimes it was crazy enough even once a week if you had a cold, rainy week in the summertime. Yeah. And that's where those cost savings come in.
Great points, guys. So then lastly, I just wanted to illustrate, as we saw a couple of slides ago, there was certainly a range in terms of what the cost per stop could potentially be. So extrapolating the previous ROI model out across some different data points, if you look at $25 per stop, the years to pay back is about 1.25 years. Then at these data points after that, it's right around that half a year mark that we referenced on the previous slide. And then if you go down and look at, total savings over a 4-year period, so at $25 per stop, you're at about $19,000. Then it goes to $34,000, $50,000, $65,000. And in terms of returns on an annual basis after year one, you're really ranging from about 81% up to 217%, depending on what your average cost per stop is. So it's meaningful potential returns as far as utilizing the iceQ technology.
Wow, that's impressive.
Absolutely, yes.
And so from there, Juan, I'll turn it back over to you to close out with some additional benefits.
Sure. So again, thanks, Jake. Thank you, Tony. I hope you guys like the webinar. We're blessed to have this relationship, excited about iceQ 2.0. 2 things that iceQ addresses front and center. Number 1, it addresses your most expensive part of your business, which is not making the ice, certainly not making the ice. It's getting it from the plant to the store. Distribution costs are a killer. Finding people is difficult. Having this data moves the needle in the right direction for that. And then, of course, customers love it. It's a point of differentiation. You're not in their stores unnecessarily. You're using green tech. The benefits are enormous to the customer, and it's a true competitive advantage. So in closing, we're excited about iceQ 2.0. Call Modern. They have it in stock. And I think at this point, we're going to have a quick Q&A for some of our customers that have solicited some questions that we're going to go through and answer for you. So we're going to start with that next. Alerts. Well, sometimes Tony would call me and say, my phone is blowing up. I go, yeah, it's the 4th of July. What do you expect? So there's 2 basic type of alerts that we have. The first and foremost is, do I need to go? Is it time to go fill that store? And working with Tony early on, we really fine-tuned the algorithm, and of course with the support of other people, but really with Tony's organization, and landed at 25%. The minute that freezer overall senses that you're at 25%, boom, you get an alert saying, come serve me. The other type of alert that we have is temperature. Anytime, and this was not an easy one to develop either. It took a lot of trial and effort. I didn't know about accounts being full and why is the temperature spiking? Duh, the doors are open. So if the freezer is at 32 degrees or higher for more than 3 consecutive hours without additional fluctuations, boom, another alert, pretty definitive. Either your compressor's bad, the door got left open. There's 100 different issues why. Again, game changer. There's other little subtlety alerts too that Tony can talk about. Not only do we give you overall percentage, we can tell you for those boxes where you sell 20-pound bags on the left and 7-pound bags on the right, whether you're wiped out on one product or the other. You can opt to have that alert or not have it. It's up to you. That's an important alert, I think, for certain people. Tony, you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to the alerts, I like to talk about the Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon alert rush is what it was saying. The Icemen know once you're going into the weekend, we'd go out, we'd fill up the stops, and we'd be ready for going in. And then by 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone is blowing up with alerts, which it can be extremely stressful and you have anxiety attacks at that when you're seeing all these alerts and all these boxes going empty. But talk about a benefit, because now I was able to always adjust my routes for the next morning to make sure that my trucks were getting these locations that were bone dry empty, and also pushing, and not just that, the ones that were in mediocre, who had not moved a lot of ice, we could push those out. And this is what this thing really did. And same thing with the what Guam was saying before, left side, right side. I knew when a customer was out of their big bags, but still had a ton of small bags left. One really, and again, temperature alerts huge. Made it so we could get out to the location again, being there before the customer even knew that there was a problem. Juan has been with this for a while now and has actually learned more about the ice business than he'd ever want to learn. He found out that this business is not easy, and it's more complicated than just selling frozen water.
Certainly is. Certainly is. All right, next question. So the way it works is the little device is set to call in on a periodic basis. Our default is every hour, which is more than plenty. In addition, if the unit senses a sudden drop of 10% because there was, some bar mitzvah or a Super Bowl party and a bunch of people took a bunch of ice real quickly, if it detects a 10% change in under, an hour, it'll call right away with that data point. Also, if it starts filling more than 10%. So it's virtually real time. You don't have to worry about that. Anytime you look at your map or your phone, you're virtually looking at exactly how full that merchandiser is.
Yeah. And those are the alerts that you like when you're actually seeing that the box has been restocked.
The fill
you
alerts.
Start seeing those when you start seeing those alerts come in, you actually feel like they're actually gaining some ground. When in reality, you're not really, but it does feel good for a second.
It's a nice comfort feeling. We aim to please. All right, next question. All right. Oh, I've gotten this one since day one. Why? Because Wi-Fi is free. Yeah, right. Here's the issue. If we were to support a Wi-Fi network, that means now I'm going to request that my customer, in this case, Tony Dixon or Olmsted Ice or Arctic Glacier, or any customer we have, that becomes a network, right? They're going to have to maintain the Wi-Fi router, passwords, resets. It's just not reliable. It's also a huge security concern for the bigger customers. They're not going to let you get onto their Wi-Fi network. So absolutely, we do not support Wi-Fi. We have an embedded device that has a cellular connection. So we're free from that. It's hassle-free.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And this is actually something that I even brought up to Juan very, very start. But after using iceQ for a while, I realized why we can't have this. Just because they're having to deal with multiple different people and their Wi-Fi network. So on top of dealing with everything else, if a box is not reading, now we're contacting the store to find out, hey, can you reset your modem for us? This brings everything central and directly with us. We have full control of these units.
Yeah, well said. Okay, next question. What service providers do these units come with? That's a really good question. The prior version to 2.0, we had the same controller, but they had little different serial numbers. And the reason is that one controller worked with AT&T and T-Mobile, and the other one worked with Sprint and Verizon. And I never knew which was going to work. In general, we would use Sprint as the default, but every now and then we had to bring this one in. The new 2.0 has all four embedded in one. You don't need to worry about it. It's going to find the best coverage with one solution, so it makes getting onto the network much easier to manage for the customers. What about areas with no cell service? In my history here, I've been at this for almost 10 years, and we've got close to 8,000 installations across the United States. I would say the occurrence of a customer and having to tell them, sorry, it's not going to work. It's happened maybe 3-4 times, believe it or not. Very, very rare. And in some cases where there are some challenges, what we can do to increase the chances of it communicating is rather than have the box inside the cowling, you put it on the back side to expose it a little bit more direct to the elements. But in general, we have very, very high success with connectivity across the platform. And especially with 2.0, it connects even better. Does it work in both types of freezers? Absolutely. Auto defrost, cold wall. There is one distinctive difference between these two beasts that I learned the hard way. One is the cold walls have coils inside. So in our predecessor, we had to have an extra shipment. We called it a hat bracket that actually Tony's Mr. Blaine Dixon help us coordinate and vent. And it's essentially creates a false ceiling in the freezer. But again, it would take you time to install it. But without that false ceiling, you're trying to mount screws into the ceiling. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to hit a coil and people are not going to be happy. iceQ 2.0 solves that with the use of a magnet. Yes, you still need to drill an exit hole and mount the exit wire out as well. But the risk of nicking a coil and simplicity have been greatly decreased. So yes, it works on all freezers, both auto defrost and cold wall.
Yeah, well, and I want to add to that too, as far as like between the 1.0 and the 2.0. I love this new 2.0 style because as crazy as it may sound to the person who's not in the ice business, they think that the couple inches of the old sonar units doesn't sound like much until you're trying to squeeze that last bag into the top row, and that happened all the time. Now that it's more sleek, it's gonna make a huge difference, which is really nice. Really, I'm upset that I just sold my ice company and now I don't get to take advantage of these things.
Well, I'll send you one that you can whip around yourself. So
yeah, thank you.
So just to be clear, that was a challenge because the predecessor iceQ 1.0 went kind of, 3/4 from the backside in the middle of the freezer. And, some people are on commission. They want to stuff that freezer and you can't if you've got, this much space. Now with iceQ 2.0, it is installed right on the front edge of the freezer and you're never going to stuff ice there. It's impossible. So it's out of sight. It's not going to get knocked off. It's very strategic and, another benefit. Next question, please. I get this one all the time. So this is an interesting one. In general, my advice on this is put it in both freezers. Unless you have an incredible relationship with the store owner and you guys have your dance figured out and you're gonna measure the backstock freezer and you're only gonna go to it when it's empty and they're gonna merchandise the front, or vice versa. Do you really want to risk kind of playing that dance? There could be a new GM or a new store employee that comes in and all of a sudden they mess up the mojo, especially if it's an outlying area. It just doesn't make any sense not to light up both. But I would consider going with both of them. What's your opinion on that, Tony? Tony, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation I've run into many times. And what's that?
No, just saying.
Excuse me?
What do you think?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, putting on more than one iceQ and a location. This all comes down again to what's your relationship with the store owner. Now we had some out there that would indoor box and an outdoor box. And we would put the iceQ unit on the outdoor box and we would explain to the store owner, we're coming when that outdoor box gets the hit. Right. And there's, of course, the people inside, the customers would empty the outdoor box and we would see when they would pull out big chunks of ice out of that one. So now that told us their indoor box is low and once that outdoor box goes to about 50% or so, then we know we're not going to have to go. But sometimes it was beneficial. Let's say you had two Model 100 sitting outside, one full of sevens, one's full of big bags. Yeah. In that situation right there, I mean, you're talking about a huge amount of money that you're going to make at that stop. And it was beneficial for us to just go ahead and put iceQs in both of them. So it really comes down to you, the Iceman, dealing with your stores and knowing what type of relation you have with the stores to make a decision on how much iceQ you're going to put at the location.
Got it. Thanks. All right. Next question is, how long does it take to set up? Good news with iceQ 2.0, it takes less than 10 minutes, especially on an auto defrost where you're not having to knock off the ice and worry about all that. The predecessor would take a little bit of time, especially on a cold wall, especially with the mitigating steps to not nick a coil, all of which has been reduced with the new technology. So setting it up is real easy. Getting set up on the website is simple as cake. Happy to walk you guys through that personally with each customer sign up. Not a problem. So simple to do. And I think we have a couple more. Should I install iceQs on a new freezer at my location, or can I do it in the field? That's a really good question. A lot of you guys out there already have pain points, already have a long, area out, 50 miles, whatnot. It is designed to be done in the field. Absolutely. So you can do it both ways. A lot of customers, however, buy brand new merchandisers and equip them all with iceQ because they made a commitment to their customer. Hey, we're going out with this new technology. You're never going to have to call us, at which point they install them in the warehouse and then they ship them out that way. So either model can work, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Very good. And I think that will conclude the Q&A session and our time today. So thank you all for watching our webinar presentation on iceQ SmartBox technology version 2.0. Contact information for both our expert presenters can be found on the screen. And again, if today's content generated any additional comments, questions, or concerns, our customer service group or business development managers at Modern Ice would be more than happy to assist you. Thank you again to Tony and Juan for their time and insights today. And we look forward to seeing you all in upcoming webinar events. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.